So let's go ahead and get started just with the weekly outlook, and then we'll move into the lecture. So when we look at this monthly chart, um, we just opened this candle, so we've still got a lot left in it. We could, I don't want to say we formed the wick on either side just yet. I'm not super clear on this. The only thing I really see is the way we took out that previous month's high before, and then now we went down and taken out that candle, and we're trading lower. Now, what I see here on the weekly, um, two possibilities. So number one, the one thing that I don't really like for any kind of bullish case is the way that we push through that previous week's low and close below it. Because if the market was bullish, we should see some kind of reaction from the previous week's low. However, we did trade into this manipulation block right here under liquidity. So I wouldn't necessarily say we'll get no rebound, but I would want to be a little bit more clear on some other time frames before plotting that out or expecting some kind of reversal or anything like that. Looking at the daily, the way that the next candle prints, like really Monday's candle, is going to be pretty decisive for me. And the reason for that is I want to see if we form any kind of internal liquidity in this swing point. So like we've formed a swing high right there, something right here. Like we haven't formed a swing low on the daily yet. So, I'm leaning bearish. What would be even better about that is if we form a fair value gap down, like something like this or wherever. And that would give us a reference point to where we would probably trade back up into before going lower. But on the daily, I don't really see that as of right now. Like there's nothing to trade from. We have taken out, some liquidity down here, resting under that low, and that's also a weekly swing point. We're in this weekly fair value gap, weekly manipulation block. So really, I want to see if we can get some kind of juice to, see how we react here. Because, at the end of the day as well, you got to take into account, like, yes, immediate level, we are bearish, but there is somewhat of a reasoning to, that changing at some point because we are in discount of this weekly impulse, right? But you could always look at it like this as well. Like we have a new weekly impulse since we took out this structure. So that's why I'm leaning bearish. But I'm aware that we're in an area where that could change. Now, what would constitute that changing? Well, at a minimum, at a very minimum, the weekly would have to start. The 4 hour would start having to put in bullish structure, and we've got a long ways to go before that. So looking at this 4 hour, kind of coinciding with hoping the daily forms a fair value gap, we're likely to get at least some kind of retracement. Like I'd say, very obvious, like first stops are going to be these fair value gaps right here. I'll draw them out with a rectangle so they're a little bit clearer. That and that, like these gaps, those would be first points of reference. Now, they're not necessarily in a premium. So while you might get some kind of trade into them and then a little bit lower, that's probably where you'd start to see that consolidation start coming back up in towards that premium. We don't want to forecast too hard. I'm just sharing my thoughts as they come. But essentially what I'm really waiting on here is a daily fair value gap to form. Right? I want that to see if it does form or if it doesn't. If it doesn't and we get a lot of energy, then I'll be looking to trade bullishly early on in the week. If it does form, I'll be looking at that as a reference point moving into the week. Looking at, when you take time into account, if it'll load. TradingView, gotta love it. Let's see if it helps if I refresh. There we go. When we take time into account. Okay, never mind. There we go. So we did get some kind of, if you're looking at overall the year, right? So, the consolidation for the accumulation would be right here, which we did get. Then we got some kind of Judas swing, and it seems like we're pushing back down. So I'm not saying I expect like bearishness for the rest of the year or anything like that, but I am saying that, I do see a possibility of reaching towards this low, right? Because it's a very clear point of liquidity. Now, again, what we do this week and throughout price discovery around these levels, that's going to really tell me all that I need to know about that. So if we continue putting in bearish order flow on the daily, I'll continue using that to trade from internal to external and trade alongside on the 4-hour. So, looking at this range, we have a very obvious point right here. I don't know why it is doing that tool, but very obvious, huge fair value gap up there, something to pay attention to. I think the price has a decent chance to draw back up into it. But yeah, I'm going to sit out tomorrow and see what develops, see if we can generate some reference points to trade into. So looking at ES, we're going to review this. This is a fail flip. We didn't take this. We don't trade ES, but we're going to review this in the lecture. But anyways, similar story. I mean, as always, in terms of the higher time frames, we've traded from internal now to external. Now let's see if we create internal, right? It's just the same cycle and just being patient and waiting, because, we can also use the 4-hour as well here. But we have a pretty big move up before we can use that if we're, trying to focus on higher probability zones. You also, this breaker's already been tapped, right? Because see how we closed below it right there? Market traded back into it. So I wouldn't really count that breaker as much. If anything, I'd say if we do start trading up, the first place that I would expect any possible reversal really for the long term would be again up in this area, unless we form that daily fair value gap. So it's all about going top down and finding, when you're trying to plan out the week and trying to get a good bias, it's about going from the top down and finding what's clear. And if you can't, then you wait, right? Looking at crude, I was off on this. I don't really trade this, so it's not too surprising. But I was thinking that it was going to react up this breaker because we hadn't traded back down into it after we'd closed above. Hold on one second, guys. What's up, babe? Okay, here. You need to wait till I'm done with the call, and then we can go over there, okay?
Yes, you're the best.
Thanks, babe. She just loves playing with this neighbor. So let me go back up a time frame on oil. So the whole basis for this originally was we had a fair value gap right here, right? And we created another fair value gap above it, and we're kind of just referencing dancing around it. But it's monthly just kind of consolidating. We're we're inverted this fair value gap. Order flow is failing. So this is what we look at as a consolidation, and obviously the market is consolidating. So I would say at this point, if I was an oil trader, I would be just looking to trade within this range. I wouldn't be looking at, like crazy moves, so to speak. And I would just be looking at, do this. I'd be looking to trade from either the 25 or the 75 back to equilibrium. And just that, like just trade those small ranges using the 1 hour. But I know most of you guys aren't trading on the 1 hour. That's just the way I would do it. I don't really see this as one of the cleaner markets for my strategy right now. I mean, obviously, it's why I don't trade it, but still want to give you guys outlook because I know there's some of you guys that are looking at it. I'm just now seeing these two questions. Is that not a supply order block? I don't trade supply and demand anymore. I used to trade that like a long, long time ago, but I'm not sure what you mean by that. Like a bearish order block? In what chart, Campbell? I'm assuming it was NQ if it was a while ago, or ES. And also, yeah, I mean, I see you guys are talking about this weekly breaker block, but if this is what you're talking about, that was where that weekly breaker block was mitigated. The only level I see here that's not mitigated is this manipulation block and that fair value gap down here. I'll come back to that if you guys find that. So dollar ended up just completely decimating the plan I had, which I thought I was going to go higher. So at this point, I would just go ahead and tell you I think dollar is going to take out all this, right? You could look for it to just trade within this range as well. And it's also starting to give consolidation vibes. But if we break out of this little consolidation, like I'd say, honestly, yeah, I would just look for this low and not make it too complicated. Right down here, I would say X that target for now, but this is what I'd be looking for the dollar to move towards. I mean, it's pretty obvious on the weekly. We've inverted that fair value gap right there, point of liquidity below it. I wouldn't even make this more complicated than that. With euro, I mean, obvious target would be right here, but I'd say it's probably going to go up here as well. So I'd say this is more of a better target on euro. Possibly even higher, to be quite honest. But I would say this right here would be the main target for euro. Pound's probably going to be similar story. Yep, so there's just a very obvious liquidity pool above. Hold on. So I always ask myself in situations when I'm pretty confident on one side, like where is the market reaching? And in that direction, where is the most obvious point of liquidity, right? Huge just liquidity pool. Market wasn't done. It doesn't look like it was done right here because we created fair value gaps through it. So I would expect this displacement to continue, right? If we're expecting this to continue, where is it going to go to? Is it going to just stop right here? I mean, maybe, probably not. Probably going to go through that. Gold. Now, another thing too, I posted this in the channel, but you need to make sure to focus on, I wouldn't say focus on, but be aware of the war scares, because that can throw a wrench in a lot of stuff. And this stuff's heating up a lot right now. I don't know how in tune with that you guys are, but Iran and Israel conflict is, and Palestine, whatever, the whole conflict in the Middle East is definitely getting tense. So that can have a huge effect on the dollar, on gold, on stock markets, everything. Okay. So keep that in mind. Crypto, I would expect at this point, I would expect this low. The reason I say that is just because the lack of any response to bullish order flow in these areas. Like, notice how it's kind of like price weighting, but just using it for bias. Like when we take profits, like look at the way that the market like changes in terms of energy. Like look at the change. So right here we have a very energetic leg in price. Okay. The next one we still create a fair value gap. It's not as energetic. And then the next one is just literally can't even displace. So after that, the market comes down, right? We had a change in the state of delivery right there. I would just be looking to seek out sell side. Like I would expect it to continue to sell off and take out this low. That would be the next stop for Bitcoin. Ethereum is kind of already at those levels. So if, I would be waiting to see if you get some kind of shift under this consolidation. I mean, this can go on for a very long time. I mean, if we look, just look at like the total crypto market cap, like previous years where we had, like a halvening, it didn't really start taking off until like the end of the year, right? Now it was different price action. Obviously, I had COVID, but the market didn't really take off until, towards that election area. So possible SMT with ETH in the daily. Yeah, I mean, I see it. You're right, but I wouldn't be focusing on that. And also another thing, I wouldn't say on the daily. On the daily, I see it as this lower low, lower low. Fuck, I think you know where I meant to mark. Maybe on like a weekly, yeah, because that's more recent structure. See how they're the next low. Because if you look at on a daily like that, you can find SMT anywhere almost. Not anywhere, but a lot more often than you should. Hopefully that makes sense. Does that make sense, everybody? Yeah, longer time, that just gives you room to always find it. So you're just going to have predisposed bias and find, because like basically, if you want to be bullish, you can always look for, oh, well, we made this low way back here. I mean, some people would disagree with me on that. I look at it as more of a constant, like, what is the market doing right now? Because a break in correlation is that the markets are moving correlated, right? Or are they? Are they or aren't they? And on this time frame, I would say both markets have bearish market structure currently, so they are correlated. Now, some people disagree with that. There will be other people that don't do it that way. Just throwing that out there. That's just how I do it. Cool. So, just to kind of recap, bearish on indices to neutral. I want to see a fair value gap form to confirm that and be very confident in it. Then I would look to trade up into the fair value gap and down from there. But of course, staying nimble as the week moves on. Same thing with ES. YM, very similar as well. Crude, to be honest, I would say it's going to go lower. I'm not like a huge fan of this chart right now, but I would say, I don't want to be Captain Obvious here, but it's probably going to take out that low. Also, wouldn't even be surprised if it didn't, because crude just does crude things. Dollar, would say it's drawing down towards this low at a minimum. Euro, going up towards this high. Pound, going up towards this high. I would trade pound before euro, to be honest here. It's just shown a lot more strength. Like if we look at this, it's still in its consolidation. The pound is kind of broken out of that consolidation. So I would be definitely trading this, like a 4-hour shift here. I would literally, if we got either a 4-hour shift there, I would trade that shit all the way up, just a swing trade on a 4-hour. Or if it sweeps again, like let's say it sweeps and then shifts, I would trade that. I wouldn't even go. There's literally no reason to go down lower on setups like this, especially with Forex, in my opinion. Crypto, bankrupt everyone. I'm just kidding. I'd say send it to these lows though for sure. Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and end the weekly outlook.